Hey, what's up YouTube? This is the Merman Master coming at you guys again from the Team Time Riders YouTube channel today with a very special deck profile, guys. I am back again with my one and only Jaden Elemental Hero deck profile, and this is right after the new list where both Stratos and Super Poly have come off. I'm super excited to profile you this deck, and for the first time I can really say this deck has been 100% street legal. Now, a lot of you know that A Hero Lives also went to 1, but that doesn't really affect me as much as you might think. This deck did focus around A Hero Lives, but not to the extent that a lot of other hero decks and even my Neospatian deck focus on it. So there's no real need to worry about exactly what's going on when it comes to A Hero Lives, as this deck is still fully functional and incredibly capable of working without that card. Still running the 1 copy in there, however, just wanted to get that out of the way. So guys, without further ado, I'm going to tell you a little bit about this deck. For those who have not seen it before, this is a fully functional, semi-competitive Jaden Elemental Hero deck. And you heard me right. The goal of this deck is basically win, but do so using Jaden's fusions that he has been using throughout his entire stuff. So you see Flame Wingman, and you see all of his fusions are run in this deck. There is a 26 card extra deck here. However, if you cut out all of the extras and you just use Jaden's original fusions, you can cut that number down to exactly 15. The first 15 cards I will profile are part of that quote-unquote Jaden fusion deck. So, without further ado, guys, we're going to get into this profile. So, to start off, I wanted to start with the fusions, but I feel like I want to start with the main deck right now to sort of highlight what we have. So, as you guys know, Jaden runs all of his original heroes. That is Avian Burstinatrix, Bubbleman, and then I also run 2 Clayman. This has been a ratio that I've had for quite a while, and I really do like it. And the most important thing about this ratio that you guys should know in relation to the rest of the cards in the deck is that certain monsters, certain fusions, and other things are not real like power plays in terms of stuff, and you want to avoid situations where you have more than one of the same type of hero in your hand and no real way to use it. So this ratio pretty much prevents that. And there's a lot of searching in the deck, so if you want any one of these heroes to combine them together with at least one other hero and your Polymerization, this perfect ratio allows you to see them when you want to and never when you don't. One thing I will note is you actually use Polymerization more in this deck than you do Miracle Fusion. The next are my 2 of heroes. It's 2 copies of Sparkman, 2 copies of Necroshade, and 2 copies of Blade Edge. I'm the only person who I've seen on YouTube who does run this. A lot of people elect to run like lots of Prismas and lots of like different other numbers. I think this is the perfect number. The fusions that you can get between Sparkman and Necroshade, as well as Sparkman and Blade Edge, are the most powerful. And having more than 1 Necroshade I found is incredibly helpful to prevent your hand from getting clogged up with Blade Edge. Plasma Vice is honestly one of the most powerful fusions, and I've structured this deck to be able to utilize Plasma Vice to its maximum level of efficiency, which I think is the most important part of it. Plasma Vice's effect, unlike Thunder Giants, is not once per turn and is incredibly useful in a variety of different circumstances. So this number's perfect. Sparkman also combines with several other heroes in this deck to form all sorts of interesting combinations, so no sleeping on that card at all. To combo as well with them is Wildheart, who fuses with both Necroshade and with Blade Edge. He does have fewer fusions that he can do with the other heroes than Sparkman does, and he doesn't really play nice with the first couple of heroes, except for Avian to go into Wild Wingman. But Wildheart has a number of very useful combos and very useful heroes with him, but does not quite eclipse the level of Sparkman. Still, though, he's incredibly useful. You can get multiple uses out of him in a single game, so he's in here at 1. Next cards, so that's it for the main sort of Jaden heroes. And then the next cards that I have in here, of course, guys, is one copy of Captain Gold. Searches that skyscraper out of your deck. Pretty self-explanatory. And now it's my set of 4, and I can finally welcome it back. We have Elemental Hero Shadow Mist, Elemental Hero Prisma, Elemental Hero Blazeman, and finally, I can say it for the first time legally, Elemental Hero Stratos. Each one of these cards provides an incredible unique versatility to the deck, and the fact that they're searchable and easily usable makes sure that you never really need more than one. The focus is and will forever be the Jaden heroes themselves. Jaden's original fusion monsters. So a deck that's, you know, overly reliant on the normal summon of a Prisma or the normal summon of a Blazeman is not really going to do anything. These guys are very much your setup play. Each does different things. We don't run any mask change. We want to discard this guy either with Blazeman or with a Poly or with any other effect. Prisma, of course, changes the name. Also is great for getting Necroshade to the graveyard. Blazeman searches your Polymerization out of your hand. And finally, Elemental Hero Stratos, the main man in the house, is finally back for searching any Elemental Hero monster. And you only do run Elemental Heroes, none of the others, although he does do that as well, out of your deck. And then also has the extra added benefit of being a useful and reliable way to pop your opponent's back row, since we don't run too much back row removal in this deck, as it is sort of quote-unquote combo breaking. You know, as you'll notice with this, we don't do too much of that because this is not a competitive deck. You're focused on the fun aspect first and foremost. So running back row removal such as Twin Twisters or MST, even if Jaden did run it, I feel would undercut the very, very tough to achieve. I found consistency, the perfect ratios that we've sort of defined in this deck. Now, closing out the monsters, we have one copy of Honesty Neos. Replaced Neos with him a while back and have never looked back. He's an incredible, incredible card and can end games very quickly. Combine them together with Get Your Game On, and that's some serious firepower. One copy of Neospatian Grand Mole, pretty self-explanatory. He can basically out the things that you don't really have a chance to out any other way, and he's come in clutch a number of different times and is a great stall card as well. Forces your opponent to sort of deal with him. Next, of course, for the last 2 monsters, we have 2 copies of King of the Swamp to search whatever you want out of your, to search your polymerizations and to also act as surrogate fusion material monsters for any fusion, which is super, super good. 2 is the perfect number. I've thought about bumping it up to 3, but we'll see how it feels. Now moving on to the spell cards. First spell card we have, of course, is 3 copies of Miracle Fusion. Gotta have this. You want to see it. Not more than one in a single hand, but the ratios work out so that you don't really have that situation coming up too often. But they allow you to banish from the field and graveyard fusion material monsters for an Elemental Hero Fusion and special summon that monster as a fusion summon from your extra deck. The fact that you can use materials from the grave sort of gives you a second wind when you use up your polymerizations, and that's incredibly, incredibly useful. Next, of course, the self-explanatory, we've got 3 E-calls. This is actually much better than Reinforcement of the Army, I found, as E-Emergency Call just searches any elemental hero out of your deck, whereas there are no warriors in this deck that are not heroes, and no heroes that are not warriors. So E-Call does everything Rhoda does, and better. Not to mention about that, I think 3 is the perfect ratio when it comes down to the searching, as you know, your fusing is the main thing, and that's why we've got those polymerizations in here. Self-explanatory. I've thought about bumping the number up to 3. I have tried it. 2 is sort of the golden ratio right now. If I could run 2.5, I definitely would, but 2 has become incredibly useful. The card is insanely searchable thanks to Blazeman, and you know, you just gotta keep running it like that. Next card we've got is the 1 copy of Super Polymerization. It's finally back. So excited to have this card back. Makes the Omni heroes all live. If you want to run a Jaden only build, you don't have to run Super Polymerization. This the total deck build size that I have here is 44 cards. So definitely, if you want to change things up with consistency or bump the number down to 40, you can take out Super Poly and you won't really notice it. But it's incredibly useful, and the best part about it is it can't be responded to. So you can out big link boards when the Trishalar comes out, or you know, do whatever other kinds of shenanigans you can do. And I bet you it's going to be really, really good if heroes ever become a thing and you can just super poly into your own hero off of one of your opponents. Next card we have, because it's only at 1, the hero lives, special summoning the hero out of your deck for half your life points. Very, very good. Has never stopped being good. I don't know if it will. Next we have Skyscraper. Since we did have Captain Golden here, this is sort of the perfect ratio, 1-in-1. Gives that nice extra little boost. And to accompany Skyscraper, we must have Skydive Scorcher. All of your Jaden fusion monsters are very, very low attack, and Skydive Scorcher is a crazy card that takes advantage of that to blow out big boards of like Blue Eyes monsters or, you know, giant link boards, assuming if if they haven't set up a massive negate or U board or something like that, and you can actually feel the Jaden fusion without it getting destroyed. I know impossible, but, you know, still thought to mention it. 1 copy of Fifth Hope, Pot of Avarice for your elemental heroes, and since it's hasn't been banned, you know, definitely got to run this, especially in this deck. Gets all your heroes back. Very, very good card. Next, my personal tech, as you guys very well know, 1 copy of Get Your Game On, doubling the attack power continuously of every single elemental hero monster or Neospatian on your field. And this is incredibly good combined together with both things like this. Elemental Hero Flame Wingman and Thunder Giant. Flame Wingman for that extra attack power under Get Your Game On, so you'll deal 42 no matter what. And then Elemental Hero Thunder Giant can only destroy monsters who have lower attack power than it. So if you've got Get Your Game Out under that, you'll pretty much be able to destroy everything super, super effectively. The reason I justify running this card, though, is because it is not a card that is useful by itself. So the deck that you've built has to be useful in spite of it, and it's very much, I would run it at, like, 3 if I cared about, one of these funny, crazy kinds of decks, but this is just at 1. It's very, very much a meme card, very fun to pull on people at locals, and a lot of people have never seen this before, so it's definitely something super, super cool that you might want to experiment with if by some way, shape, or form you're able to get your hand on one of these. So, now, moving on to the rest of the spells. The last 3 spells we have are pretty self-explanatory. 1 Swords Revealing Light, 1 Monster Reborn, and 1 Raigeki to close out our numbers. Swords is also incredibly good, especially if you got Blaze Man and your opponent can't out it. Just keep getting off the effects. Now, moving on to the traps. 2 copies of Mirror Force, Jaden Original. 2 copies of Call of the Haunted. Really, really good getting back your other things like Stratos and your Shadow Mists and things like that. As well as Field and Fusion materials. Monster Reborn is at 1, and even though it's at 1, that might not be enough revival for the deck. Next card we have, of course, is 1 copy of Fusion Reserve. The only way in this deck to recur Polymerization from your grave. I've tested out Fusion Recovery and have found it very, very inconsistent. You have to have Fusion summoned before it, whereas with Fusion Reserve, you do not. In worst case scenario, you don't have a Polymerization in the grave. You can just flip it as a chain to search any elemental hero from your deck to your hand. So very, very good cards. You'll notice a lot of this common theme with a lot of the things in the deck is they don't require certain things like to be in the deck. And, Skydive Scorcher does require a fusion monster, but it is very much a meme card and a sort of win extender rather than it is a central piece of the deck that must work. And the final card we've got in here is 1 copy of Solemn Judgment to close it out. A classic that Jaden used once and never touched again. Now, guys, moving on to the extra deck. For the extra deck, we have all of Jaden's original fusions here. We've got 1 copy of Flame Wingman and 1 copy of Thunder Giant, which I explained about a little bit earlier for their powerful effects, dealing damage and destroying things on the field. And instead of 1, we're now running 2 copies of Elemental Hero Shining Flare Wingman. Very, very good card. Can be made with Flame Wingman and one of your other Sparkman. But you can also use King of the Swamp to pull this out even easier than you would with Flame Wingman. So all of these are really, really good. Next cards we have in here are the Blade Edge fusions. Elemental Heroes Plasma Vice and Wild Edge, 2 of the best fusions in the entire extra deck. These guys are incredible. Wild Edge to start with allows you to attack everything your opponent controls once a piece. Very, very good. And if you boost it up with Honesty Neos or with your Get Your Game On, it can be devastating versus a full board, especially of attack position monsters that your opponent controls. And then Elemental Hero Plasma Vice, as I mentioned before, is kind of like a Thunder Giant that's been boosted up like crazy, discarding cards from your hand to pop things that your opponent controls that are in attack position, and it's not once per turn either. So, you could search out Shadow Mist, discard Shadow Mist, search a Necroshade, and then, get 2 or 3 pops off of, a couple of searches like that. Very, very good card. And then not to mention his defense position piercing damage that he deals as well can go crazy if you boost him up with Honesty Neos and can swing onto a full board of defense position monsters. Now getting into some of the other heroes, we have 1 copy of Elemental Hero Darkbright, kind of like Plasma Vice Jr., still does that piercing and also can pop a monster when he leaves. 1 copy of Elemental Hero Rampart Blaster, also an excellent hero monster. Just being able to attack directly for half damage while in defense mode, and also being a nice wall. Elemental Hero Mariner, the main guy who you want to work with Skydive Scorcher, very, very good for attacking directly as well. Boost him up with Honesty Neos to get a very, very high attack. I think it was like a 3,400 something attack, or 3,900 attack direct attacker with a set face down card. Next, we've got Wild Wingman. I know I haven't summoned him a lot in the past, but he's become incredibly useful as a great way to pop back row, discard 1 and then pop a back row. Still is kind of a minus, but is very useful if you can get his effect off and you want to go for the game from there. 1 Mudball Man for that strong defense. 1 cup of Elemental Hero Necroid Shaman for popping, and then you can special summon something, which actually has come in great handy. Especially playing against Dark Worlds or Monarchs who run a lot of battle faders. You can swing over a low attack monster rather than attacking your opponent directly and still deal damage to them despite everything else. 1 copy of Steam Healer, kind of like Flame Wingman and Shining Flare, except it deals the damage, or it heals you the damage instead of dealing it, and it has a slightly lower attack power at 1800 versus Flame Wingman's 21. Now we're going to be moving on to the last couple of cards here. We're going to close things off with 1 copy of Elemental Hero Tempest, Avian Sparkman and Bubbleman, the ultimate sort of storm hero there. And then if you really want to run this, you can, but you don't have to. 1 copy of UFO Roid Fighter, which can actually be made in this deck with a combination of any hero and a King of the Swamp. Do note you can't make it with Miracle Fusion, as it is not an elemental hero, but it's still a really cool card nonetheless. And then the final cards, you're running 1 copy of Electrum. As I mentioned, I've summoned this hundreds and hundreds of times. Very, very good card and very easy to summon in this deck, whether by Miracle Fusion or Polymerization. You just have an insane amount of searching. Most of the time I just summon it simply because I can. Other hero plays would be much better than summoning Electrum, but a lot of people have never seen this guy hit the field, and when he does, it blows people away, really. So very, very cool card. His shuffling back of banished cards is really, really good as well. I've actually done that versus a Metaphys player. Has a devastating effect, so you'd be surprised when it comes in handy, but it's still a very good card to have. And then finally, for heroes that you can run, are Elemental Hero Core. Any 3 Elemental Hero monsters, very, very easy to summon as well, and has some good destruction effect, and can also pop, or can special summon any Elemental Hero Fusion monster from your from your graveyard that you've already summoned, as well, ignoring the conditions, which is super, super good, as Konami decided it fit to give all of them restrictions that they couldn't be summoned outside of Fusion. Elemental Hero Core helps you get around those restrictions. Now, guys, you already know them, you already love them probably, but here are your Omni Fusion. So these guys, 15 or 16 cards here, depending, would be your, your sort of main guys that you wanted. If you wanted to just go for a purely Jaden build, you can run them, and you'll still win a good number of duels, especially against casual opponents. If someone's got some crazy deck that's going to U-board you, you're not going to do anything versus that. Links have, sort of been a, main thing, but if you want to run, Isold or some other stuff in there, like, you can totally do that. So that's that, and then closing out the other half, the 6 Omni Heroes. Very, very good cards, also good for Super Poly. Include these if you want. I don't usually like to go into them too much, simply because, you know, they've gotten a lot of time in the sun. The Jaden Heroes don't really get too much time in the sun. It's a foregone conclusion. And then the last 3 cards of the deck that we're running. 1 copy of Adoration, 1 copy of Trinity, and finally Starving Venom Fusion Dragon for those dark monsters and for Super Poly. 3 very, very good cards. If you want to keep it super Jaden, you don't got to run the Starving Venom. I thought about running Mud Dragon, and I've thought about running that Trishula card since it kind of goes along with the Fusion theme. But, you know, to each their own, I guess, and it depends on how sort of on point you want to keep the deck. So, with that being said, guys, that is my Jaden Elemental Hero deck profile. I really hope you all enjoyed it, and hope that you've learned at least something from it. I really like to try and make these deck profiles as informative as I possibly can to whoever wants to play them. But obviously, you know, it is up to you guys to decide how you want to build this deck with the new format. I'm super excited that both Stratos and Super Poly are finally back, just in time for Soul Fusion, by the way, guys. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see how decks evolve and how they move from here on out. With that being said, guys, thanks so much for watching the video. If you liked it, please remember to rate, comment, and subscribe on the Teen Time Riders YouTube channel. And this has been the Mermail Master, and I'm signing out. Catch you guys next time. Peace.